Welcome to the third episode of the Irrepressibles podcast with today's guest company, Pluvo.
So where did the name, so RAIN is the name of your company, and what does Pluvo mean?
So RAIN came from the cloud adoption strategy.
Right.
We were like the next step to the cloud,
Right.
so RAIN. And Pluvo means rain in Latin. Technically, pluvia means rain in Latin, but we felt that pluvia sounded like a disease. So we were just like, nah, let's just something simple.
Yeah.
Andrew, who's like, engineer, is like Pluvo. And, it was available. We found the name and let's take it.
Yeah.
Pluvo is a financial forecasting tool helping teams humanize numbers.
Since the beginning, every time we hit a really big milestone, we were like, okay, that was hard, but now
This is it.
we're good now. We're good.
Yeah.
And you're never actually good.
There's always another bomb.
Yeah, there's always
that's
just,
gonna fall.
it gets harder. There's more challenges, new challenges too that you haven't faced before.
Meet Alex and Vanessa, Pluvo's co-founders.
And diversity for us means diversity of thought. So Vanessa and I are complete polar opposite type people. I'm more visionary, she's more the get shit done type person. And you need to have both in a company.
Yeah.
Andrew is a completely different mindset, more technical. Sebastian, he graduated, to give you an idea, in biomedical mechanical engineering. And he came to us to do marketing. You know what I mean? So just a different dude. And so 4 completely different types of people that think completely differently brings a lot of power to the table.
Alex and Vanessa, hello. So happy to be here with you.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
Hi, great
Yeah, I'm
to
really,
see you.
and here we are in your workspace, which is really gorgeous. Thanks for having us here. Appreciate it.
Thanks for
And
coming.
I'm really looking forward to having this discussion with you because I know you have a lot of really cool things to talk about. But before we go into it, I'd like you to maybe explain a little bit what is RAIN? Like for someone who has no concept of what you do, how would you explain what you're selling? What is RAIN about?
Do you want to go for it?
You can go for
Okay,
it.
we're an all-in-one planning software. So we essentially help people make the most out of their resources. Think about money, people, any resource that a company has, we help them maximize what they can do with it.
So it's just, I'll try to reiterate. So it's a
sure.
software, something that they could install on their computer. And
Yep.
when you say maximize what a company can do, what exactly
So
you mean in terms of scheduling or in terms
All
of
of it.
financial planning? What?
all of it. So
All of it.
financial planning, strategic planning, every company, every business has resources of some sort, right? And the whole work around planning is to try to do the most out of what you have. So we found ways to optimize the way people do their plannings so that they can, again, do the most with what they have.
Okay. So we'll come back to that a little later to see how you came to want to build a company that offers this service. But before we go there, I know that since your beginnings and now, it's been how many years now since you started?
Technically 5 years.
5 years. Okay, so in 5 short years, you've come a very long way. So what would you say during those 5 years were the mindset or mindsets, if there's more than one, that were necessary for you to be able to overcome adversity and the challenges to make it where you are now?
That's a great question. I think there's many. I think you have to be adapting to the environment around you and what's happening in the moment. I think you learn a lot about yourself and what type of mindset you have to have in order to continue to grow and also get through the hard times and even the exciting times, I'd say. And I'd say the biggest mindset that you have to have is probably understanding how to regulate your own emotions and how to keep pushing when things are hard, but also not get too excited too early, and really just be able to ground yourself is definitely one of the biggest mindsets that I'd say I had to work on specifically.
Yeah,
But
maybe to add, I remember when you start and you get into entrepreneurship, everyone tells you got to be, resilient. And I think
Yes.
that's such a heavy understatement of what it is.
yeah.
You can't, not only do you have to be resilient, you need to be very well grounded in the sense that you can't get too happy, you can't get too sad, you have to try to stay zen. But also I think the word resilient takes a whole new meaning every couple quarters.
Okay.
So like at some point when you start, you're like, oh wow, this is hard.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, the next quarter, wow, that was easy. This is hard. And it just keeps getting harder in different ways.
Yeah.
And you just have to put your focus on staying zen the entire
Staying
time.
zen. So okay, so adapting to your environment, regulating your emotions, expecting things to get harder. But I'm just going to go a little further with that. So if we know that the resilience has to become more and more intense as we go forward, what motivates you to stay in that kind of work environment or in that kind of project?
So I'd maybe take that, like what I would say is not that you have to expect for things to get harder, but you have to expect that they don't necessarily get easier either. Like it's kind of, again, back to that regulation thing. I think that's the best way to say it.
Mm-hmm. I think since the beginning, every time we hit a really big milestone, we were like, okay, that was hard, but now
this is it.
We're good now. We're good. Yeah. And you're never actually good.
There's always another bomb.
Yeah, there's always it gets harder. There's more challenges, new challenges too that you haven't faced before. And so, I think it's just always a wave of ups and downs.
And is that something you come to like?
You have to. You have to. That's the thing. I think especially recently, because you start and it's hard and everyone has, I think the main motivator at the start is that people have big dreams, right?
Yeah.
But then you reach the dream and it's still hard. And then by the time you reach the dream, there's another dream. And so it doesn't really matter how big of a company you are or how small you are. It's the same problems, but different challenges. And you just have to adapt to it. Whether you're like Facebook big or just starting out, you still have issues. And you have to just start loving solving the issues, loving being around the people that you're working with. And if you don't focus on that part, the resilience and the motivation piece will leave. You need to stay disciplined.
Okay.
I think you have to enjoy it in order to stick it out. Yeah. If you don't enjoy it, you won't stay. So.
That's a great point. And you were saying loving it, enjoying it. That's awesome. So we can sort of apply what you've just said to your concrete experience. Tell me a little bit about how Rain came about. Like what are your backgrounds? How did you meet? And how did this come about?
Well, I'll start with my side and then you kind of pop in there.
Yeah, sure.
But basically, I started, so I previously, grew up here in Ottawa, was a hockey player, and then eventually I went to go and study finance at the University of Ottawa. One of my best friends growing up, who is now an actor, and he's doing really, really well. Him and I, we wanted to work on something together, not too sure what, but we knew we wanted to do something. And then I had the opportunity to go work at the government, saw certain things that I didn't love.
Okay.
But the thing is, those problems were very hard to fix, like very, very challenging. And you need to have such a very extensive background in what we were trying to solve at the start.
What kind of problems are we talking about in government that you found?
Well, so what happened is that there's all kinds of problems in any organization. But for us, it was the fact that there's just a lot of inefficiency in the way people spent money in the government. And it went against the values that we have. Vanessa also worked in government, but I'll let you say your part after. But essentially, when you see the end of fiscal year and they just spend all the money towards just like getting rid of the budget so that they can get budget again the next year.
Yeah.
Being a taxpayer, being new and full of hope going into university and thinking that everyone's doing the right thing, very disappointing. So we went to fix this issue, but to try to fix this issue, again, you need that financial background that I didn't currently have. I didn't have that kind of financial experience that Vanessa has.
So just before you come in, Vanessa, when you say we tried to fix the issue, what you mean is like from the outside, trying to address issues within government.
Oh, I was actually working in government.
Yeah.
And you're there and you want to do something better. You want to change the way things are being done.
Okay.
But there's just so much bureaucracy and the complexity of the problem is so large that you can't just like have a quick fix. It has to be very well thought out.
Okay, so you had ideas and suggestions, but you weren't able to put them into practice because of the complexity of the bureaucity.
Exactly, but that's where Vanessa comes in.
Go ahead, Vanessa.
Well, I also started my career in government. So I was an analyst there, and I worked in finance at a specific department in Ottawa. And I saw a lot of the inefficiencies that I think Alex also saw in terms of the systems that were in place and how planning was being done within the organization and how resources are allocated. And so, I also kind of felt like I couldn't really change anything at least from internally. And so I kind of saw that there was a plateau of innovation that I could really bring to that space and that work environment. And so I decided to move on, and I went to work for a very, very large organization, which is a law firm. And I started my first day, and I think I had done a transaction for like $300 million, and it was the first time that I saw that big of numbers. And also at the time, I think I was probably 19 or 20. Wow. And so I was doing these major transactions for lawyers and for huge merger and acquisitions. And I moved up the ranks pretty quickly there. I really was always driven, and prior to starting really my official career, I was always a manager. I was always managing teams, and so that's really what I wanted to do. Especially with my background, my parents are, directors and managers, and that's just where I wanted to go, really. And so moved up the ranks really quickly. I was one of the youngest managers of the firm, or the youngest manager at the firm for a few years. And eventually I met Alex at a student event, and then he basically, I think 3 days later, I was on a call with him, Andrew, and Seb, and we were talking about budget manager because they had questions about finance. And I think I just got infatuated with the project because they were pitching me budget manager and how they wanted to change budgeting within government. And
just to step back, so neither of you knew each other while you were working in government, but you sort of had the same sort of reaction or experience during your time there. And then when you talk about budget manager, this is in fact a product that Rain initially created. So at one point you created this company, Rain, and then reached out to Vanessa. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, a whole thing. So Vanessa had implemented SAP before, which is the number one. It's the same ERP that the entire federal government uses.
ERP being?
Enterprise Resource Planning Tool. Or it's essentially an accounting software in a way. But it's just very, very heavy, very complex. It's the tool that if you're a multinational large organization, it's what you're using. And so she had played with it. I had never even touched it before. And I mean, not only that you played with it, you implemented it, but she had also built AI and machine learning bots in her organization. And, us trying to be forward-looking, we needed that kind of knowledge, right? And so reached out. I mean, it started with like hey, what do you think of this? And then, do you mind, the answer was so technical. I was like, do you mind just joining a call with, 2 other dudes? And she's like, sure. And so she says it to us, and we start, okay, interesting. Then we start questioning her a little bit more. And then like, okay, we're onto something here. It's like, hey, do you have time tomorrow again? It's like, oh, sure. And then, after a little bit, suddenly it's like every single day we're talking, and she's helping us on pitch decks. And it was interesting because I think we had tried to do something, and we had built for one specific client of the federal government. And so it was good. Like I was 20 years old and I already had my first federal contract, which was crazy, but it was not scalable. Like it couldn't go to all other organizations. And so the company was going towards a very slow death, actually. Nothing was happening. I was, working part-time at another job, doing school. And then suddenly Vanessa comes in, and there's like, oh, there's momentum, right? We get into this accelerator out of a favor, like crazy. This is a crazy story. Like this just goes to show, like you never know who you're talking to, right? And so when I was in high school in 10th grade, I started going to university. It's part of like a special program that you start early. And I had a mentor that would help me through this, and his name is Corey. And Corey is the founder of The Grocer, which is a great company in Ottawa. They're doing great things. And he was helping me, and I remember I would go to him with crazy ideas all the time. I just wanted to do something. I remember there's one specific story here. Is one night, it's like 12 p.m. Or 12 a.m. and I call him like, Corey, are you like at Ottawa? I need to come see you. He's like, sure. And then keep in mind, at that time, I didn't even know who Elon Musk was. I go see him and I'm like, Corey, I have the next best idea in the world. It's like, tell me. We're going to fly planes through clouds and storms and have like rods that will let them hit lightning on it. We're going to capture the energy, bring it back down, and suddenly we have infinite energy. And I just remember him telling me like, Alex, I think we'll leave that one to Elon. I was like, for weeks, I was like, what's Elon? And I was like, he didn't know it was a person or a thing. I had no idea. And so anyways, that same guy, fast forward like 5-6 years later or 5 years later, he sends me a text. He's like, hey, I have a friend out of Toronto who's doing like this accelerator and he's looking for tech companies. I know you had something going on. Would you be down to join? And like, so we just got in. We didn't really apply. They just got us in.
Yeah.
Had we applied, I don't think we would have got in. So we get into this thing. Vanessa's joining. This whole point of the accelerator was to help you build your business plan. It's like a very early stage thing.
Okay.
And so we got the opportunity to reimagine what we were trying to build. And with Vanessa's knowledge and experience, so it was like a new start for us at that point.
Wow, that's a great story.
Yeah.
So eventually you found out who Elon Musk was.
Yes,
And,
yes. Yeah.
Well, that's a great idea, and
Yeah.
it's like you were saying, when you pitch that to someone without any fear
Yeah.
and or inhibition, and look what it gave you a few years later.
Yeah.
So here, okay, so now, what made you, Vanessa, embark? Because you had this great job with lots of responsibilities, and like you were saying, a couple of dudes call you and say, "Hey, can you help us out with this?"
Yeah.
But then you decided to embark. So what made you, leap into this adventure?
That's a great question. I think so. I started probably a year before. Well, I started part-time with the guys probably a year before I actually left and did it full-time. So I think at some point there was a lot of work to be done, and so it became a lot to do both at the same time. So that was one. But I think I was, everyone around me kind of thought I was crazy, even of thinking of leaving at some stage. I was kind of on a track to still have more promotions and be in a very stable job that's still challenging and a great place to work, really. And I often think back about this. I think in the moment I really struggled to leave and make that decision and make that leap.
Okay.
But now I'm realizing that was probably the easiest decision I was going to have to make for the for the next few years. And so I think the biggest reason I left was also we got funding from to do a research and development, and so we were really blessed with that. And so there was a little bit more security to actually leave and go full time. I think prior to that we weren't making enough revenue, and so the grant really changed the outcome for us.
It was a whole convincing game for me. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
it took months.
Yeah.
What was your pitch?
Well, it's like, because at the end of the day, like I'll say what I
Go
could
ahead.
see from my side. Is like, I remember Vanessa being on her phone and just always being scared of the emails. I was like, don't you just want to work for yourself? I was like, you get to be your own boss. And then, but you had all the stability in the world. So it was like, well, what are you providing? Like, how are we going to do this?
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a challenge. But.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's kind of what I love to explore with you young entrepreneurs is that, the choice to let stability go, which is a huge decision, like you said yourself, because you have a good salary, you have a very stimulating job, I'm imagining, with a lot of challenges, and you make that choice to just embark on something with a lot of insecurity, a lot of unknowns, a lot of risk. So you have to have a certain comfort with risk to be able to do this.
It definitely felt risky, and I think everyone around me, especially my family, my friends, were kind of telling me that I was crazy too. So it's almost, trying to convince yourself that it's going to be a good risk to take on and that it's a good decision. And I'm really happy I did it.
In retrospect, so
yeah, very happy I did it.
And you had to do a lot of convincing to get her on board.
Yes.
Yeah,
But it was all worth it.
For a few months too, and we
Yeah.
had no funding. It made no
Yeah.
sense for me to
Yeah,
leave.
like, it was very, very risky.
Yeah, but at some point we were working so hard. Like I remember working both jobs for 40 to 50 hours like
Wow.
each at times, and so
Oh,
I was
gosh,
working like insane. And so there was a part of me that I was thinking, okay, well, it'll be less bad if I'm just full time with Rain. But honestly, it just got worse, to be honest. So it is what it is.
Okay, so when you started, the project was Budget Manager,
Yep.
which was, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was a software that was geared towards government.
Yes,
And
exactly.
that was your primary client.
Yep.
But you soon found out, I guess, that there was a sort of ceiling, or you weren't going to be able to go as far as you expected or as you hoped.
Yeah. Well,
Okay,
let's talk
so-
about the process of even getting into government. That's
Right.
the first big issue to tackle. For us, like, there's so much red tape. And so this is where I think it's interesting, because I think to this day, this is where we found our scrappiness, right? Like, sometimes as an entrepreneur, you just have to find ways to make it work. And so back then, how do you get into government when you want to build a software, but you need to have some of the top infrastructures in the world from a security standpoint? You can't just put in a cheap software, right? And so one of the co-founders' dad, who worked at Salesforce, was talking to us about how Salesforce was struggling to get into the federal government as well. And actually, this is where the name RAIN came from. So the government had this thing called, it was a mandate across every department that was called the Cloud Adoption Strategy. And so, they're moving everything to the cloud, and Microsoft Azure and the big players like that are winning the entire space. And Salesforce is seen as a CRM, right? But Salesforce has a huge cloud infrastructure that is partnered with Amazon, and they wanted to promote that side of their business. And so we basically built up a proposal where we're like, hey, we're going to build on your platform. You're going to give us the entire infrastructure to get into government. We're going to keep your UI so that people know it's Salesforce. And then, opportunities might arise from it. And so, it worked out for them, worked out for us. Everyone was happy. We joined, basically, it was called an ISV partnership and an OEM partnership. The client didn't even have to pay for Salesforce. It was just done through us, which was great. So that's how we get in. But then you get to a new challenge. It's
Right.
interesting. So, you did that first challenge. Now, what's the next one, right? So the next challenge is that we were young.
Yeah.
Like, how do you fight against being young? There's not much you can do. So you just got to make the
Most
product.
people fight
Yeah.
fight to become young again.
Yeah. In our case, there's not enough gray hairs on us. So they're like, yeah. Like,
There was some departments that really were interested,
Yes.
and some that did end up purchasing Budget Manager, implementing it. But there were some instances where Alex and I were doing demos of our software, and you could tell that they were kind of taking it as a school project in a way,
Okay.
Yep.
and not necessarily taking us seriously. And
Yeah.
so
Did you feel like the attitude was a bit condescending towards you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I think what was crazy is that and I still believe this to this day, we had created such a good software that it was competing against tools that are costing them, $8 to $10 million to implement, and we were charging $40,000.
Wow.
And so they would look at the price and be like, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would I pay $40,000? It clearly doesn't do
Yeah.
what it's supposed
I
to
want
do.
to spend more money because.
Yeah.
Well, that too, but it's also like, there's no way, right?
Yeah.
And so, but we had, and actually,
I think it was questionable because people
Yeah.
people thought, well, if it's this cheap, it clearly doesn't work,
Right.
which it did.
well,
But
so we had our first client, we had a second client,
Yeah.
but then your department that you worked at ended up buying,
Yeah.
which was cool, like
Yeah,
full
right.
circle for you.
yeah,
But listening to you, I'm thinking. So you were saying you were about early 20s,
Yeah.
like very early 20s when all this is going on, and
Yeah.
you're pitching this huge. You're pitching to huge clients who are talking to the government,
Yeah.
and does it? Looking back, do you think there was some naivete there, like thinking, like, when you're that young and you think the sky's the limit,
Yeah.
and we're doing this, kind of like when you pitched your story, your Elon story.
Yeah.
Or
Well, I think you have to have that. Even to this day, sometimes we forget. right? I think the world tells you, oh, this is wrong, this is right, this is wrong, but no one really knows. And you just have to, like, you have to take the feedback, it's good, and build on it.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just got to let it go and just, like, you know what your vision is, and you got to stand for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Would you say you were out of your comfort zone back then, or you were so convinced of your product that you were?
I was convinced.
Yeah.
I remember it was hard for us. Like, I remember, like, getting no's every single day. It was like, and it wasn't even a no because it's not good.
Yeah.
It's like, this is a great tool. I think my team would love this.
Yeah.
The price is way under our budget, which is great.
Yeah.
I have to spend $5 million. It's like, okay.
So there was, you're too young. This is sketchy because it's not expensive enough.
Yeah.
And by the way, I have a bigger budget and absolutely need to spend money. So
Yeah.
these are the obstacles that you were
Yeah.
facing.
Yeah.
And I think there's a reason government does this. Like, I don't want to throw them too much under the bus. Like, at the end of the day, looking back and learning how government works, they usually tend to like seeing a company being in the private sector for like 10 years.
Yeah. Right.
So that it has so much validation and usage that there's no risk, right? Because the government can't take too much risk.
Right.
And they're being smart in terms of they don't want to spend money on software that's not going to work or that's maybe risky for them. And so it makes sense, their strategy. And I think to your point, maybe we were a little bit naive on that end, because we were looking at other companies, and obviously we knew that usually they start their path in private sector and then pivot to public sector later, or not pivot, but they'll expand to public sector because that's another beast of its own, right? And so for us, we were like, oh, we're starting with public sector. We're revolutionary.
But it honestly gave us a lot of what we're doing today would have not been possible had we not been so different.
Yeah.
Because everyone's like, wait, you're starting in public sector. And like people were like, you're not going to get a single contract. Suddenly we have 3 federal departments using our product.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. So I think the resilience was very strong. There was all the conviction in the world.
But one thing that caused was the fact that investors didn't want to touch us with a 10-foot pole either.
Yeah.
Because you were dealing with government?
Yeah. They don't.
Why so?
Well, because they know that it's a very hard industry to get into or even to sell into. There's a lot of policies, a lot of politics that goes into it.
A lot of red tape.
Yeah, and even with an election, it can kind of throw off your whole company if that's the only revenue that you're relying on. And so investors, when we said GovTech, they were like, no thanks, I'm not interested.
And was that a moment where you sort of had to do a 180, like when you realized that it's either government or it's investors?
It's part of it.
I mean,
we started, so we were getting a lot of no's at federal, but some yeses. It was still working.
Yeah.
But as a young startup, you need money, right? And so a 40K contract doesn't do much. So then we started expanding towards provincial governments, then municipalities, and then there's just good feedback, like things were going well. We were going towards university, colleges. We did a bunch. Like, we traveled across Canada and Quebec to like meet with financial people or financial leaders within their space. And I mean, public sector was interesting, but we were slowly figuring out that for example, we would meet someone at a specific university, and they're like, "This is great. I think I want to start this in 2025." We're still not 2025, which is crazy. But
soon, but not yet. Yeah.
For them, it was like, that's super soonish. They have other priorities, and they need to move slowly because they can't take risks.
And they usually have to do des appels d'offres. RFPs, and so a lot of the times maybe they have an RFP that's already open, and so they can't just pick a software. And our software was priced at $40K because it went under procurement rules. I don't know if I can say that, but it is what it is. But it's true, and it was smart, and that's how we wanted to start getting into the government and public sector. And it just, every time it was either it was going to extend for 12 months, or they had an RFP out so that they couldn't even talk to us. So we were starting to learn that it
wasn't a place for us.
No,
it was.
It was so hard.
Our investors. So I think there was a lot of people. And this is not just for, like, if you're in startup land and you want to get funding, like, it's the thing that everyone wants to do, but people get funding just to get funding. It's not the right way. Usually you want to get funding for specific things. But investors, a lot of times, especially early stage, they'll invest not necessarily because you have a good idea, but more because you have the right team, right?
Oh, yeah.
They know that they might be like, you know what, your idea is really bad, but your team has all of the capabilities and the right people to pivot to something else.
Is this what happened to you?
Yeah. So we had some people, like very early stage investors that came in and said, you guys are great. You're in the wrong market. And so they wouldn't force us. They let us figure it out ourselves. But everything around us was telling us that you're in the wrong market.
Yeah,
Okay.
they essentially said that they didn't like our idea or the market specifically, but they loved us as founders and loved our team. And yeah, so we actually went back to them once we pivoted, and then they were like, okay, now we'll invest.
And
but
why is it that
not
they
in the
loved
first
your
one.
team? Like, what was it about you that
I think so.
drew this admiration or this?
We have our values as a company, right?
Okay.
So the number one value that we have in our company is diversity. And diversity for us means diversity of thought. So Vanessa and I are complete polar opposite type people. I'm more visionary. She's more the like get shit done type person. And you need to have both in a company.
Yeah.
Andrew is a completely different mindset and more technical. Sebastian, he graduated, to give you an idea, in biomedical mechanical engineering. And he came to us to do marketing. You know what I mean? So like just a different dude. And so 4 completely different types of people that think completely differently brings a lot of power to the table. Because if you can work together, it's powerful. And so I think all of us are very coachable. And so we were able to listen, but also make our own minds, which people really like that. So we had all of those pieces that really helped us do what we needed to do.
I think it speaks to our passion too. I think people also saw how resilient we were through the pivot through Budget Manager and then pivoting to Pluvo. I think that resilience really shines through, but it's our passion too. We're obsessed with the field. We're obsessed with the tools and the tech that's in the financial and planning space. And it really shows when we talk about it. And
Right. So tell me about Pluvo. So we talked a little bit about Budget Manager. We have an idea of what that is. But so Pluvo, from what I understand, is the product that you created to change towards a private market.
Yeah.
Away from government. So what is it exactly?
Yeah. Well, so I think because we were seeing what we were seeing in government and public sector, and it was tough, and everything was pointing towards we need to go towards private sector. I think the last straw, which was crazy, was that the CTO of SAP, and again, like I know SAP, you didn't know what it was, but SAP is like one of the largest companies in the world. It's a very big company.
Largest companies in
the world for
in
in this space, or if not the biggest.
Okay.
And like their CTO reaches out and it's like, I love what you guys are doing. I love the vision. I just can't work with you if you're on Salesforce, and you need to have your own platform.
Okay.
And so we were like, okay, maybe we need to build our own thing, because then we were also like hitting a maximum level of innovation that we could hit on Salesforce, and so we're like, I guess it's that time.
Sorry, Salesforce is not Budget Manager, or is it?
Budget Manager was built on top of Salesforce.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, using their infrastructure.
Okay, so it wasn't solely your creation.
It was our creation completely. So basically, think about like when you build a website, right?
Okay.
Technically, any web application is a website.
Right.
So we had built on top of their backend, I guess. We built our own interface, our own everything.
Okay.
Custom, but the backend was their data factories and so on.
Okay, and so this is what was a liability now for you in terms of growth, was this backend.
It was not letting us go to that next level.
Okay.
But yeah, and so we were looking at private sector, we were interested, but as soon as you look at private sector, suddenly there's 1,000 different competitors, right? And so we were like, okay, interesting.
We actually started trying to sell Budget Manager to private sector too.
Yes.
And then we realized that
we weren't good enough.
No, it wasn't good enough at all to compete with what was available in that space.
Yeah.
So yes.
And was that like, and plus all the competitors, like at this point, are you scared? Are you exhilarated at the idea of, overcoming this challenge? Like, how are you dealing with this realization?
I think we were at that point in time, I don't think we had any excitement or any sadness per se. Okay. It was more like, we need to figure this out.
Okay.
So, but there was a point where we found something and we were like, oh my. But basically, what we did is we started with just doing a research. So there was this study that was made from Gartner that was saying that 80% of anyone that uses these tools on the market ends up back on Excel. And Excel seems to be, the standard way. You can do anything on Excel, right? And so even the government, mostly Excel. And so we're like, Excel again, right? And so what we did is we're like, let's not try to figure this one out ourselves. Let's just go listen to people. Let's see what they're thinking, right? And if I can give any advice to anyone, is just listen to your clients. Listen to the people you're selling to. They'll tell you the answer. Don't try to figure it out. And so we interviewed 300 plus CFOs globally, and just tried to understand, what is going on and what's the problems that they're seeing. And really, it was that, and I think Vanessa, you said it best at that time, but the role, it was about humanizing the numbers was the big idea. And it was,
humanizing the numbers.
Yeah. Basically, CFOs used to be just backwards reporting, just worry about, what happened and just give you the reports, right? And the finance team used to be very secluded. No one really talks to them, right? But now, the advantage that this finance team has is that they can see the whole business from a holistic standpoint, right? So if a departmental business unit owner, so let's say you're the head of marketing, and the company has a certain goal that they want to achieve, and you're, as a marketing leader, saying that I'm going to do these different initiatives. Well, in order to get the budget to do it, you have to speak with finance, and finance can now be a strategic partner in helping you figure out how much money you'll need and how much the company can give you to do it. Because finance can see not just your department, but every other department, which ironically was the same problem in government. Government has their departmental plan, they have their departmental budget, and then they had their departmental results. 3 files that are completely disconnected. They don't talk to each other, which makes no sense.
Right.
And so Vanessa, at some point, I remember we were at Zach's Diner, and she's like, we need to humanize the numbers. And I was like, yeah, we do.
Yeah. Well, I think because when you're looking at a spreadsheet with numbers, a lot of us have the analytical brain where we can spot discrepancies and understand it really well, but it's not everyone in a department or organization, company that can understand exactly what's going on behind those numbers. Right. And so if you can put words to those numbers and combine qualitative aspects with the quantitative, then you're getting to a place where people can actually understand numbers and understand plans, and you can put it in the context that any budget owner or business owner can understand it, whether or not they have the financial literacy to understand it. And so that's where we wanted to go. We wanted to get to a place where financial plans and financials and overall can be understood by literally anyone.
So this moment at Zach's Diners when you said we need to humanize the numbers, was this a sort of light bulb aha moment?
Yeah, we were struggling. It was a hard time.
Now you knew what you had to do.
We were trying to figure it out. We were we're very passionate, right? And it's just not working. We were crying, and that usually when we hit those moments, like the last time it happened recently, I told Vanessa, I was like, something's about to happen. And I had spoken to you. I was like, we're gonna come back from this, and everything's gonna be okay. And I get chills saying it.
And within a few weeks, you did. You said it's done.
It happened so fast.
Yeah.
So that was the first time we had lived it together, which we were just like, I remember Zach's Diner crying, and then at some point Vanessa just says that, and we're like,
and you're crying because are you worried for your company at this point? Are you thinking like it's gonna go down the tubes?
There's just no funding. There's nothing.
We were essentially halfway through our funding. So we're probably 6 months in of me leaving and everyone coming full time. Even our CTO had an incredible job, left his job. We were full time, all of us, and we were 6 months in. And we had one contract on the table, and we knew that if we didn't do anything else,
it was a government contract too.
Yeah, it was a government contract too, and so we weren't getting anywhere, and so we were like, we have to find something that can maybe save us out of this.
What was tough is that sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you is to get a contract.
Yeah.
Because then you're stuck. Right? So we were stuck, and we needed to move, but we didn't know how. We're talking to all these CFOs. We're getting so much new information that from a technical standpoint, there's just, us even thinking about building our own platform, we were talking years, right?
Right.
It's just like, it seemed impossible. And we were running out of options in a way, right? And like, this is not that long ago. We're talking about like maybe August last year, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So very recent.
Yeah, very recent.
Just a little over a year.
Yeah.
August
At the exact
2023.
moment.
Yeah, we're still doing budget manager at that time,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
crazy.
So this moment, I'm really captivated by this moment where you say we need, so on two fronts, what happened in your mind to come to that realization of humanizing the numbers? And then also you, when you heard this, were you convinced that this was the solution? So
Yeah.
Vanessa, maybe tell us where did this come from?
I think it came from from the government and the clients that we were speaking to. The thing that would come back a lot was the fact that budget owners were struggling with understanding a spreadsheet and just understanding how they were going to allocate their resources. And there was really a disconnect between the finance teams and then the other teams in the organization, and they really had a hard time communicating. And I think even when we went to the private sector market and looked at the tools that were out there, it seemed like even if we were replacing the spreadsheet and making it a little bit more automated and it worked well with the softwares were being created at the time, they still had a lack of connectivity between what is the strategy and what's happening on a human level and then what's happening in numbers. Because honestly, and maybe this is just my nerd brain, but you can know a lot by looking at numbers of a company. And I think it takes a certain acumen to understand what's going on a human level and a more operational level. But if we could do that and translate it in an innovative way and give more personality almost to numbers, then I think that's where we could maybe get to a place
the image
where
that
it
comes
was-
to mind when you talk about this is the Matrix, and how you see all the the numbers in the Matrix, but they illustrate a very qualitative reality.
So that's how I felt, right?
Okay.
And so for me, Vanessa has this financial background. She understands. We're talking to these CFOs, and they're telling us all these different strategies on how they fix this issue with other numbers. And so it's like numbers on numbers, and I'm just seeing a bunch of numbers.
Right.
I'm like, what does this all mean? This is again, we're crying. I'm just like, this is hopeless. This all doesn't make sense.
And you have a milkshake in front of you.
Yeah, milkshake,
Exact.
fries, the whole thing. And Vanessa's just like, we need to humanize these numbers. I was like, yeah, we do, because I don't understand. And so it was the perfect situation where Vanessa is the CFO, and I'm the business unit owner that doesn't understand the numbers. And so we're like, how do we
So it kind of happened between you two at that
in a way,
moment,
yeah.
and then the idea was how to make this happen on a
if
bigger
me
level.
and her get it,
Yeah.
so that means the CFO and the business unit owner is satisfied.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then we're like, we need to make this, if we connect, everything connects.
Yeah.
And then,
So then what happened? So you're crying, and then all of a sudden, the tears went dry, and you're like, okay, we have work to do.
Well, it's like
Is
we
that
started
what-
Honestly,
brainstorming. Yeah, we're just brainstorming immediately.
It started, it was crazy. For a while, we had this large space at the time, our workspace, and we had whiteboards everywhere, and then it was just whiteboards on whiteboards. And I remember spending late nights till 2 a.m. with Seb and Andrew and our engineers, and just mapping out, and we were arguing and fighting and trying to figure out how this would ever work and how we would build it.
But it's also you're fighting your internal conflicts, because you have a contract, you have something that works, you're going to change everything now. I remember one night I spent the entire night just designing kind of a wireframe of how this could work. And one morning I get to the office and I start drawing on the board, and all the devs come in and they're like, oh,
Because they're working on the other product at this point. So they're like, you want me to build this other thing?
from
I've just spent
scratch.
2 years building the other one.
Right.
So, and even me, I was like, maybe are we just not trying hard enough? Maybe we just need to reimagine how we're selling to public sector. Maybe we need to improve our product, and we don't have to pivot this whole idea. But at the same time, there was kind of a feeling internally that we were like, no, this one.
Would you say a
one
gut
will work.
feeling, an
Yeah.
intuition?
Yeah, we
that
knew.
it's what
we
you
knew.
had to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's because it's never been done. There's nothing that does it today. So we're like, this is clearly it. It would work for me. It would work for you. We're like, let's go for it.
Yeah.
And we were very lucky, again, because the blessing that we had is that we were surrounded by so many successful entrepreneurs that have been through it, that were able to kind of guide us through these emotions, through all of it.
What would they say to sort of mentor you through it?
So the self-regulation thing is the number one thing.
Okay.
You never believe it when someone tells you, and it sounds so meh, but it's so real. It's it'll never stop. And I remember asking someone, it's like, hey, like you just sold your company for hundreds of millions. Like, that's like the problems are still there. Like you have to just fall in love with that. If not, you really should reconsider.
Wow.
And so we were like, okay. But then like helping us through like the idea too, because they had all their own businesses. So like, what do you think? And we got to talk to a lot of people. So.
I think you always have to analyze risk versus reward. And that's the hardest struggle as even a CFO or as a founder. You need to understand that there's certain risks that could crush your company, but others could have a very high upside. And so sometimes you're gambling your future if you decide to just stay in your comfort of today.
Right.
And so you just have to get uncomfortable in order to make sure that your future is secured. Because I think if we hadn't pivoted, then we really would have just
You have to have a
survived.
certain comfort with risk, basically, and discomfort. And like you said, get out of your comfort zone, but you have to be willing to do it and find comfort in that discomfort, I guess, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So, okay. So how do you humanize numbers? So this is what Pluvo, is about.
Yes.
Yeah.
So can you kind of explain how you did that? So you had the idea, but like concretely, what does that mean?
So step one, again, great mentoring from the people around us. They're like, don't try to just build it, design it first, then figure out how to build it, because you'll spend so much time and money doing it and hitting so many walls, right?
Is this what you had done with Budget Manager?
No,
Build it
and
first
we had started building first.
Yeah, before designing.
Before
so
designing.
now you're going to do things differently.
Yeah,
Okay.
because we were hitting so many walls. Like, oh, actually, we need to undo all the work you just did for the last 6 months and do it this way.
Yeah.
And so, and that was the final, on the whiteboard, I had realized a very technical thing in finance, but the cost center, profit center, just the way people were speaking to us and explaining the certain, I guess, complex aspects of finance, they were saying it in a language that everyone agrees upon, but from a technical standpoint, it's completely false.
Okay.
And so we had built it that way, and turns out we were like, and it was like the step one thing. So you had to remove that one, and everything else fell. So we were like, this time we're gonna design. We're gonna see what the market thinks, listen to people, get the feedback.
Okay.
So we did that. We worked with, we were lucky. We worked with another person that we know very well, and then we went to the market, showed it. And then immediately you start feeling it, right? Like the team is starting to get very excited. There's like the passion is like back up and running. Like
I think the designs also helped us
make it real
and actually push through that pivot, because I think seeing it was like, okay, this will work.
This is what I want. Yeah, it's there. It's no longer just an idea, it's there.
Yeah.
And we were fortunate enough that the people that helped us design it had an engineering background too. So they were able to help us bring all the ideas together in one place, which was great. And then suddenly you have you have your vision in front of you. You're literally looking at it, and you're like, oh,
Wow.
It's real. Like we can do it. So
and like you said, I find that interesting what you said earlier, how you start feeling a sort of effervescence within the team, and that's when you know that you're on the right track.
Yeah. We were hitting like November. We have a lot of validation. The other app is just continuously not working. Andrew, our CTO and co-founder, he was like starting to get it. Like I remember he just made the website page, like the first, it just said welcome Pluvo. Or at the time it was actually welcome Asterix was their first name.
Yeah.
And it was just like a blank white page.
We knew right there that he was excited too. And if we can get our CTO on board, then we know we're good. He's hard to convince. So,
but once he's on, he's on. So.
Okay. Yeah. So where did the name? So Rain is the name of your company, and what does Pluvo mean?
So Rain came from the cloud adoption strategy.
Right.
We were like the next step to the cloud.
Right.
So Rain, and Pluvo means rain in Latin. Technically, pluvia means rain in Latin, but we felt that pluvia sounded like a disease, so we were just like, nah, let's just something as simple. Yeah. Andrew, who's the engineer, is like Pluvo, and it was available. We found the name, and we're just, let's take it.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Okay, and so why? So it started with the cloud, but does it mean anything? The idea of the rain, something coming out of the cloud, is that kind of where you were going with that, or any significance there?
It's just that it's the next step to the cloud. I think we always believe that, we were trying to innovate. The cloud was big. It was a big thing. We knew that there was a next step. We wanted to be that next step.
Yeah.
And to be honest, like by accident, it kind of happened because of AI.
Yeah.
We didn't know it was going to be AI, but AI
Yeah.
was the next step to the cloud.
Yeah.
Right? So,
Okay. So I'm thinking of the timeline because you were saying this moment where you weren't sure the company was going to survive was a little over a year ago, and then everything you've described that you've done so far seems to me like an insane amount of work.
Yeah.
And so how did you get it all done, and how fast were things moving?
Insanely fast.
So fast.
Yeah.
So we started our designs probably in October. Well, we started brainstorming and whiteboarding in August, and then October we started designing. We had full-fledged designs probably in December, and that's December of 2023. November of 2023. December, so Alex and I were trying to get pre-sales of Pluvo even before it was even we started to code, just to see if we would have interest, if people would even be interested. And that's one thing that we maybe didn't do well the first time, and so we wanted to redo it this way and understand, de-risk the project, right? Because if you have people that are actually interested, then you can push through. And so December, during our Christmas party, Andrew, our CTO, created the first webpage, and that was the day that we created it. We then were doing pre-sales from January to June, and in June we launched. And so that was...
January had a great piece of advice. So one of our mentors, Graham, he was the first person I pitched to. And so I pitched the entire vision, like, oh, you're going to be able to do strategic planning, financial planning. This is how it's going to work. Here's the designs. He's like, Alex, you had me sold in the first 3 sentences, and then you just kept talking. And then I'm not sure anymore. Sounds very risky. Like, again,
how are you going to build all of it?
Because one thing is that we want to be, when, at the start you asked, what is Pluvo?
Yeah.
It's an all-in-one planning software. And so currently there are 10 different tools you could use for your entire planning cycle. So how are you going to fit all of this in one place? And how are you going to properly leverage AI to make this even more efficient than what it is today? And so, it's too ambitious of a goal to just say out loud before you even start building.
Yeah.
So what he suggested was pick 3 key features that people can get behind, and just start with those 3 features, and then pick another 3 features. That'll be your version 2.
Yeah.
Then pick the next 3 and keep going, right? Keep growing the product. So we de-risked the project by doing that.
Okay.
But before that, we had another hard moment in November. You took big sacrifices for us too.
Yeah.
We were running out of cash, straight up.
Right.
We were running out of money. The thing is, the funding we had required us to pay a big chunk. It was, I think, the invoices were $40,000, and then we would receive 100 something every time.
Okay.
Which was great, but again, where do you get the 40,000 if you're not making sales?
Exactly.
And so Vanessa took a pay cut. She was already taking crazy risks, but we were full. At that moment, we had that conviction that this was the right idea. We were all in. We took one for the team, and
That's how much you believed in the project.
I mean, honestly, when you're in it, it's you work so much, and you're also convinced that it's gonna work, and so it's really just you have to push through. And I'd rather, I say this all the time, but I'm gonna sink with the boat if I have to. I'm not gonna leave before, and it didn't make sense for me. I think we needed to see it through, all of us, and it's been that November. Yeah, there was some pay cuts, but we had other pay cuts where the founders we didn't take salary for a few times, and just because cash flow, and we needed to push through, and we need to reallocate
that's
the resources.
What's fascinating is when you say I'll sink with the boat if I have to, it's that passion or that determination, which I think is necessary to find success eventually. But it's that what I would think is a very scary thing to do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you were so convinced. So would you say that fear was a big part of this, or were you so convinced of the project that it was more like a necessary obstacle to overcome?
I think because I act as CFO, it's hard for me to even. I know how we need to allocate resources, and so I know when decisions need to be made and where we need to cut or where we need to invest. And
This
I
is what
knew,
you mean by humanizing the numbers.
Yeah.
So to you, when you see the numbers, you have this vision.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
And I knew how it needed to work, and I knew what we needed to do in order for it to push through. And so, yeah, but I think a few times through, especially the last year, I realized, oh, this is why people don't do this.
Oh yeah.
All right, because you're at certain stages and through certain periods, you are questioning in a way if it's going to work or not, and you just need to have the crazy conviction that it will work out if you just keep through. And
so did you have moments of doubt where you thought, did I make the right decision?
Yeah, of course. Well, no. Never if I made the right decision.
Okay.
Never that. But if it was going to work, yes.
Okay.
But I think never did I regret or anything like that at all. No.
It's the whole risk reward that you were mentioning.
Yeah.
Like if this works out, like everyone likes to say like, oh, what if that, but what if it does work, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just an attitude that you have to have. And for us, it was like, if we make this happen, we're helping so many people. We actually get to maybe one day go back to public sector and help them too. Like there was
So you haven't given up on public sector?
No, we'll go back. We'll go back.
No, we'll go after our product is mature. And we talk about this all the time. We want to be able to expand and get back to public sector eventually too.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you're pitching Pluvo, just so I understand it completely, when you're pitching it to someone who doesn't really understand what it is, how is it different from another software in terms of planning? Like, what is it about Pluvo that makes it human?
It captures the human element. So, for example, an organization might decide that we want better culture, right?
Okay.
How do you capture that on numbers?
Right.
Right. You see your spreadsheet, and maybe your marketing department suddenly has a spike in August, and you have no idea why, right? And so the CFO might know why, and maybe after a bit of analysis, you can figure out what happened. But in our tool, you're able to connect those, non-qualitative or non-quantitative things, the qualitative things, into a place where we've created a place where you can connect qualitative to quantitative.
Right.
And so you can, when you're looking at your financial model, you can, what's going on here? And then it immediately links you to the quantitative side.
Oh, that's a cool, say there's an increase in spend in certain areas, and then being able to click into that and understand, oh, that was our initiatives to try and improve our culture. We did this event and we tried this and we tried this, and then tying it to results. And how do you even tie results to culture, right? But it can be as simple as understanding the sentiment within the teams and being able to tie it into, feedback from managers that are saying, yeah, I'm feeling that culture is improving, and maybe even it's understanding how the employees are acting within the organization. And so tying that back to just the increase in spend, there's so much more to understand on how we're spending and what the ROI is.
The thing is, nothing ever goes to plan either, right? So like everyone, when the year starts, they're excited, it's a new year, let's go. So they do this entire plan for the fiscal year. Yeah. And then, first quarter happens, Q2, nothing went to plan. And it's disaster. It's like, what do we do? Why did we spend on Tony Robbins coming to our office? It's like, oh, but it was culture. Where's the culture? And it's just disorganized. And so bringing all that in one place puts it maybe a bit more zen. If that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and this is a completely innovative product. From what I understand, it doesn't exist. You came up with a new idea.
Yeah, there's ways you can do it. It's just fragmented. Right. It's not connected.
This makes it easier.
Yeah.
Okay. And so at this point, where are you at with the sales and with the product itself? Are you out of the woods, Vanessa, with the sacrifices that you made?
Yeah, we're in a stable place. I'd say that it took some time to get to a stable place, but yes, we have a repeatable sales process. We have interest, we have customers, we have people on the platform. Our team is keeps developing on features, but there's always the next feature, the next iteration, and our vision is very large, and so we're still very early in that process in terms of the product and even in the growing the company and growing the revenue. But yeah, we're in a stable place, and it took some time, and we're happy. I think there's more risks and more sacrifices that you make all the time. I think it goes for really any founder that's building a business. There's sacrifices to be made, and you know, sometimes you lose even friends on the way, and you have to make sacrifices here and there, and that's something that you just have to go through. And
so you're in a stable place, but Alex, you were alluding to a little earlier a very recent event that sort of destabilized you, and that you got through. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, we can talk about it a bit, but I was going to say also, like offline, we were talking about the importance of looking back and how this podcast allows us to do that. And I think it's powerful. But I think we're so in the thick of it, sometimes we forget, right? Like, so a thing that investors will do very often is they'll come hear your idea and then say, yeah, interesting, we'll talk later. And what they're doing is they're actually keeping tabs, see if you're going to do the things you said you would.
Oh, okay.
And they'll do that for like a long time sometimes. And, you know, one of the things we had said very early is that we're going to de-risk the project. We're going to start with clients that are here. And as we add features, we're going to go more and more upmarket. And so, again, looking back at some point recently, we're like, oh, wait, we actually did that. We did. It worked. And so sometimes you got to like, oh, I have this problem. It's like, wait up, we've done all of this correctly. Let's enjoy. So bring back the self-regulation.
Yeah.
And so, and again, we hit like our first churned customer, right? So a customer left. And for us, it was like a breakup. We were completely like destroyed. It was really hard. I think every company has that for the first time, hopefully. I don't know if we overreacted, but we had this moment. We were really sad. You know, someone basically said our baby was ugly, right? And it was just very insulting to us, right? And so we work hard every day, and we're like, no, it sucks. Like, oh, shit. And so it was.
And we really, you know, we worked hard to keep the client and to, you know, adjust things and build things differently for them to stay with us. And there was just certain aspects of the product that just didn't fit their industry or in the business. And so it just, you know, it wasn't necessarily on us, but it was, you take it hard because it's the first time it happened to us. And
well, it sounds like it was very emotional. So. It wasn't just like a business.
Well, then not just that. There's a new problem. It's like, oh, you have to refund someone. It's like, whoa,
that's true.
Where's the money? We were tight, and like we're in a raise. We're raising funds, and you know, it was very early on within that raise, and at that moment, like we had, you know, I think everyone has different levels of comfort. Like we have certain founders that we've met that they have like 19 months runway, and they're like panicking. They're like, whoa, I have only 19 months. We're at a point where we had like 2 weeks.
Wow.
It was like 2 weeks and a lot of debt. And so you're like, everything's on the line. Yeah. And so there's that point where you now have to also refund, which means you're not getting a pay. And so we were like complete breakdown again, crying. And
were you at Zach's again?
Yeah, but not at Zach's again. But this time we remembered, we're like, something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? We're like, we know something's going to happen. Just keep working, it works out.
We always say, so all of us in the company, the thing that we say is we always figure it out. And it's just the thing that all of us say, and we're like, we always figure it out, it's gonna be fine. And even after those really hard moments, and every time we really do.
We were super sad too. So the big news, and kind of like at that moment, so the program that we got into, that I can't say yet who, is one of the most prestigious accelerators in the world, if not the most.
Explain what an accelerator is.
An accelerator is a place where you accelerate your business. So they have all the resources. They're backed by the biggest funds in the world. Okay. They have some of the best mentors in the world, and they're there to help you get to the next level. The thing that they do is they actually de-risk your company for all the funds, because it's so hard to get in. We're talking less than 1% of people that apply that get in. So because it's so hard and they've done so much of the vetting, the funds are now very comfortable with just investing and going all in without even hearing your story. Okay. So we had done the application process many times in the other years, never got in. This year we apply, we actually get an interview. So we're like, oh, and another interview. Then we keep talking. It's like, okay, we're getting through steps. And they're very transparent with like your odds of making it. So at the start, you're sub 1%. And then by the last interview, you're at about 20% chance. And they had told us like, hey, we'll call you back next week to let you know. And, you know, next week arrives, there's no answers. So we're like, oh,
I remember saying we were all of us in a room, and I was like, I guess we're not even important enough to get a no email. That's fine.
Yeah,
It's
like we're in
okay.
a really bad place.
Like we were in a bad place. Like
Yeah.
I was laughing, but yeah.
So this is all happening at the same time. You lose your client.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you're feeling
We're feeling bad about
hurt
it.
Yeah.
almost about it. and
Everything's
then-
happening at the same time.
Yeah, we're not even getting the no. And
Yeah, we're like, come
we
on.
email them, they're like, oh yeah, we'll email you the next week. And the next week, still nothing.
We're like, okay, well, I guess
it shouldn't get in.
it's fine.
And then I remember, like, we felt it. There was some, like, we knew it was coming soon, something. We didn't know what it was, but we were together. And I just remember, like, someone else emailed me, actually. And it was, like, very late. Like, it was, like, 10 p.m. And I look at the email, and, you know, I click back to, like, just close my phone. And I just see, like, congratulations and the logo of that organization. I'm like, and it's the first time I did, like, and I just, like, threw my phone. I was like, oh my gosh. So then we were like, and she knew immediately. I don't know how.
Yeah, I
She
just
was
looked
like,
and I was like, no way.
Oh yeah.
yeah.
But this is the second time you talk about intuition or gut feeling.
Yeah.
And it's cool because, like, from the standpoint of someone who's not a business person like myself, I always imagine entrepreneurs as being very, I guess number oriented, or like there's no feelings or gut feelings that
It's
go into
all
it. It's all very
feelings.
planned. But what I'm learning from you guys is that there's the planning. Obviously, you have to do that. But there's also something else, something more intangible that goes into decision making.
Yes.
And you know,
And that's kind of the part of the whole humanizing the numbers, but it's actually the complete opposite of what they teach you. And I think there's a thing where, you know, you go to university to learn, which is great, but they don't teach you that part. I remember being more like that, where I would not visualize anything. And then Vanessa was like, no, you have to visualize things. You don't realize how powerful that is. If you can close your eyes, visualize the future you want to be in, and literally feel it. Like, you can smell it, taste it, like every single part of it, all of your senses are aligned, it'll happen.
Yeah.
Just yesterday, we were having a team dinner, and we realized we were looking for the first picture we took as a company together back in 2020. And I found screenshots in 2018 of me, like, basically I had done a board of my dream, like, office, and it was the office we got in 2018. And
so
it was
you did a dream board.
and I
And
took
you got the-
screenshots of an office. And it just so happens that exact same office ended up being our office 5 years later.
Wow.
Which is like,
Yeah.
So, like, I think you just, there's the intangibles.
But the intangible is the reason you're doing it for, and what the end goal is. And I think if your end goal is just money, I don't think you're going to make it at all. And you need to remind yourself why you're doing it all the time. And if you don't, then I don't think you're getting through either.
I think.
And why are you doing it? Sorry, Alex. So when you say you have to remind yourself of why you're doing it and it's not money, what is it?
I think for me, it was always about helping businesses through hardships that we went through. As we're building now, I'm realizing how much it's so important. And I think, so a lot of companies, even 80 to 90% of companies fail because they run out of cash and they did poor planning. And I think there's so many innovative ideas out there, and you can actually really, truly help if you have the right tools. And so that's one of the convictions. I think the other conviction that we have, and I say this a lot, but I think it's also, we've been through so much since the beginning, that for us, just getting to the point where we feel like, okay, we've built the product that we wanted, we are at a place where we've succeeded, that feeling or that sentiment is really what keeps us going as well. I want to see everyone that's been there win and make it worth it, right? Because you're not going through it for nothing.
We used to have our thing where we would say, like, if you're an entrepreneur, it doesn't really, I guess it matters the idea, but it's going to be something you're passionate about. But entrepreneurs tend to be passionate about a lot of things. Right. So then it's like, well, what's the one thing you can do? And for us, like, we were like, I mean, we can work on curing cancer. It's very complicated. There's like all these different things we could try to fix. Yeah. But it's like, what can we do to help other people fix these issues? And, you know, again, so many companies, they might be right on that path to solving one of the biggest issues, and they run out of funding. Right. Like, Really, like, how shitty is that? Like, great idea, great team, they have everything, and they just ran out of money, and then a competitor buys it and shuts it down. We're like, no, let's try to build something that'll help people, like, not run out of funds, make sure that they're doing the intangibles within their organization.
Yeah, if we can help our customers change the world, then that's
a good
what we
thing.
want to do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. So, when you look at the very beginnings, and would you say that you had that vision from the get-go, or did it evolve with time? Like, because you seem to have now a very specific focus of where you want to go and how you want to help.
I think we always had the same vision of wanting to help in that specific way. I think you just said it the best way, but it's knowing how to do it that changed. Like, I think we had, our first thought was like, well, who has the most impact for us? I mean, government. We live in Ottawa. Government does everything. Like the hospitals, it impacts all the social programs. So we're like, if we can help them, a lot of people will benefit from it.
Yeah. So we were helping them optimize how they spend, how they build initiatives, how they can support communities, and so it started there. But we were always, now we just pivoted to
private, but same conviction.
But it's the same conviction, same feeling.
Same conviction, and with the idea that you might go back eventually. And
100%. Yeah.
So it seems like years might have gone by between then and now, but we know it's been a little over a year. Are you still facing people that are seeing you as too young or not expensive enough, like you were saying at the beginning, or is that behind you now and you're on to something different?
I think it's behind us for sure. Sometimes there's still like some feelings, I'd say. It happens. I think we're young. We're in a space that's competitive. We're against people that have more years of experience than us. And at the end of the day, I think one thing about us though is that we grew a lot as people. You have to, and I think it's felt in those conversations, and people know that we know what we're talking about, and we've built a lot. And I think we're more confident in ourselves as well. And I think that resonates it shows when we speak to people. But I think the customers are different too. They're more used to seeing maybe younger founders, and maybe we sound older, to be honest. It probably is that. But yeah, there's always that sentiment.
I think for us, to this day, I'll say that it's just, we're obsessive. And if you're going to be in our space, you have to be an obsessive. And so because we're obsessive and we looked at every single possible solution that's out there, when you talk to someone, nothing's a surprise. And so they might have 20, 30 years on top of us, but we know their exact issue. We know if the tools they've used. And so it allows us to have the conversation, which is something we weren't necessarily able to do before. But with time, that experience allowed us to do that.
We've spoken to so many people. Like we understand the space, we understand their problem truly, and we understand the competitors, the tools, we can have a conversation with anyone, and they'll see that we know.
And I think we've changed our attitude too. Of like, I think at some point, as a business person, you're just like, I need to sell, and it's not about selling. It's about how can I help you. And sometimes I can't help you, and your tool is actually really great. And that's okay too.
Yeah, sometimes we say, we're like, you're not a fit for us, and we're not going to try to push you a product that we...
Just to make money.
No.
So if it's ironic, but you turn your mind away from money and money comes. Does that make sense?
That's fascinating. So when you stop grasping basically at something that you want and you just sort of let go, then somehow it comes back to you.
Exactly.
Oh yeah. Letting go is really important.
Most important too.
If you're too obsessive about the risk or about what might happen, or even wanting something, I feel like sometimes it's just better to step away and let it go and just, okay, we're good. And again, it's emotional regulation. Like, don't get too excited about things, or don't get too upset about something, because I think by doing that, you're almost pushing it away, or you're making it happen because you're literally projecting that something bad's going to happen. And
like you said, it's about projecting also, right? You were talking about visualization, and how if you visualize something that you want or that's positive, it will most probably come to you. But if you're always thinking about what could go wrong, then that's what you're going to be manifesting eventually.
100%.
So just coming back to that wonderful news that you got, where you actually did show some emotion and thought, yay, this is... We didn't get the no email. We got a positive email. So what's next for you now?
Well, so, we're moving to San Francisco. So we're going around, I would arguably say it's one of the best tech spaces in the world.
Yeah.
We get to be around some of the best mentors and leaders globally to help us bring our vision to light and just accelerate the entire process. I think it's really good for us because, again, it is very challenging for us. Like, if you're not, like, there's a lot of resources here, and we're very lucky and blessed to have that, but our ambition is so high, and what we're trying to do is very complex. So the opportunity to be with those leaders and really bring our real vision to light, it's a big thing. And also just getting the thumbs up from them, right? Like, I think it was the biggest validation point that you could get. They see thousands of companies, they interview thousands of people and all kinds of like good ideas, and they only take 20, right? And we were number 7.
Wow.
And so they were like, for someone with so much, background as they did, and they brought some professionals into the space, it was just another point of like, hey, yeah, you guys are right. We want to get behind us.
Yeah.
Well,
you guys have
congrats.
something, so it was good.
This is huge. It's huge news. It's a heartfelt congratulations to you for
Thank you.
having gotten this wonderful opportunity. You're going to move to San Francisco shortly.
Yes.
And embark on this. It's for a 6-month period. Is that right?
Yeah.
So it's a sort of a 6-month internship, I guess, is a way of calling it, or mentorship, or
it's a program that we're going to be around other companies. We're also followed by specific industry mentors that are incredibly impressive. We get in front of the biggest investment firms in the world, and so it's just about being a part of the ecosystem for that 6 months period. But it is kind of almost like a growing opportunity, and it says it in the word of what the organization is. It's to accelerate us to the next phase of our business. And so we had the opportunity to go all the 4 core founders that we've been together since the beginning. And it's just a great opportunity.
What's crazy is that every single one of our current mentors, everyone was telling us, you need to get out of Ottawa somehow.
Is that right?
And we weren't able to do it, but this forced us. And I think it comes down to mindset. And so a lot of times, we're in a government town, the mindset is not necessarily pushing the entrepreneurship. When you go to a place like San Francisco, where basically most of all the big companies have been created there.
Yeah, statistically speaking, you just have a better...
You're around people that get it.
Well, statistically speaking, you have a better chance of having a positive outcome in technology specifically. And technology is moving so fast, and they're the first that ecosystem is the first to get a peek at what's happening. And so you're kind of disconnected in that sense. So
and it's something I challenge. Like, I think as a human, when you graduate high school, they tell you should get out of your own, your old town and just experience life for yourself. I think our baby, which is the business, has that opportunity now to go and experience it. I think it's hard, like it's already hard enough entrepreneurship, but when you have crazy ideas and just getting them shut down all the times, it makes it all the more harder. And going to a place where there is no crazy idea and everything's possible, it's going to be positive for us. So.
Well, it's so exciting. Vanessa, a little earlier you were saying that you had very grand visions for the company. What's the ultimate? Do you have an ultimate goal, or is there no actual ultimate goal? You just want to keep going?
That's a good question. I mean, for me, we'll stay until it makes sense for us to lead, if that makes sense. I think for us, we want to build it and continue iterating and building a large company. But I think the biggest thing we want to do is just build a great product that will help a lot of people. And so as long as we can do that, and even if we have to, get it bought by someone else or get acquired or et cetera, then we'll do that if it makes sense for us. If we want to bring it all the way to maybe a public market or whatever it is. I think I have a lot of crazy vision ideas, but I'm never set in stone on one specifically, because I would be happy with a few outcomes. And I think if I open the door to multiple outcomes, then one of them is gonna happen.
I hear you.
For me, it's just, I just want one day that anytime someone is doing business and are ready to grow and go to that next level, the first thing they think about is Pluvo. Whether it's us that leads it to that or not, we'll see. But I think we're going to bring it to a certain stage and figure out how far we can bring ourselves.
Wow. Well, the both of you are really inspiring. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I would love to talk to you again, maybe in 6 months,
Yeah,
if possible,
course.
and see, where this journey is going to take you.
Yeah, of
awesome.
course.
Yeah,
Thank you so
for
much.
having us.
Thanks again for coming.
Thanks again for making it all the way to the end of this episode. We hope you enjoyed the conversation with Alex and Vanessa. Feel free to go follow them on socials. We have the links on our website, irrepressiblespodcast.com, as well as more information. Also, you could follow Pluvo on Instagram and other socials to get updates about their company. We also suggest you subscribe and follow us on Instagram to never miss an update and to be alerted about our future episodes. For example, our next episode with Graham Barlow. Graham runs a successful software development company and organizes founders' dinners where he invites founders from different industries in the hopes of helping them connect and build a greater network. If that sounds interesting to you, subscribe, follow us on Instagram, and we'll see you there.